longtime resident of San Francisco. She's written and performed in the Bay Area, focusing around issues of disability and sexuality, publicly and privately. She's excited to be part of the Bay Area scene, and she enjoys the delicious stories of her fellow LitQuake readers. Zoe Katz, welcome up. I'm so glad you're here.
It is really great to be here, and it's amazing to see all the writers and everyone that shows up for this event. It's my third year, and it's exciting to be here at this location. Every October, I don't have a prize. I give myself, or no one else does, but it's my 17th year in sex work, and I haven't retired once. So there you go. All right, make sure I get this right. My son and my wife died in a car accident 7 years ago. This sentence was within the first two sentences of us sitting down to negotiate our scene. He was the most banal of business casual, the uniform, khaki pants, and a long-sleeve blue shirt. He was heavy-set, a tugboat body, stocky and strong. I was working in an industrial space that had a contrived plywood-walled room that somehow created intimate spaces. The negotiation took place in the outer industrial-built parlor of the warehouse space. This is where the first details are always withheld. He had arrived via house madam, so I had not spoken to him before, nor had there been any index cards by his given name and his birth date in the card files. The second sentence I realized was the crux of the session foisted on my lap. I let there be a silence between us, as there was a reason he said this to me. "See," he said, pulling up his boring blue shirt. This is where the gearshift punctuated my lung. He was showing his near not living experience. I looked at his torso speckled with gray curly hair. I saw the twist of a scar tissue below his ribcage sucking into his pink bulbous body. I looked at it trying to think how to come back to a space allowing for more BDSM information. He pulled down his shirt as the house madam walked past, as she was checking on the time to keep the negotiation to about 7 minutes. I asked him about marks, blindfolds, face slapping, hard genital sensations, and masochism. Carrying on a basic negotiation is always the best procedure when an unexpected answer resides. The inner-built playroom warmed while I waited for him to go on, as his time was already paid for, as this time was also within his pro-hour experience. He looked like his outer shell was done talking, and then he began to fidget as a sign of legal furtherance. He gives me money. I put the money on the clipboard and give it to the house madam, and she disappears into the dressing room office to the opening tones of Law and Order. I want to feel the hurt the way hurt feels. I heard the key sentence he spoke, and that's what he brought to some physical to mirror the pain he related to me. He wanted to show me how he had seared right through with his filial legion of loss. I didn't understand grief then and how it haunted the soul. I was in my early 30s, and my body had not learned the loss of another soul. I was willing to give him physical release, not understanding how grief is a ghost that creates a diaphanous web in whatever situation that occurs. And she, his dead wife, was wrapped within him, and I knew we would all be alone in that room together. We played together, my wife and I. She liked to punch my balls, he continued, and we joked that she was a ball buster, a lingering joke between the dead and alive in the outer lounge of the Bay Shore. I stood up to lead him into the propane heater-warmed play space. He watched my market knockoff 9 West heels glide into the room. "You have great legs." I gave him glacial dominant, with long red hair, full femme unavailable, swish and a glance. I depended on icy stares to fill uncomfortable silences in my early dom years. I wore my black, supple, low-cut velour work dress accompanied by thigh-high black lingerie that another client had purchased me. He walked through the curtain-constructed partition and into a plywood 5-walled room. I instructed him to take off his clothes. I watched to see if he could balance while undoing his clothes under scrutiny. I turned the disc player to start the disc that was 64 minutes long. I feel his brown eyes on my calves, on my pale calves. He was a leg man all day long. I was still cold in the room and was unveiling myself slowly as a time-honored time suck of tease and denial. His cock stood at attention. I immediately thought, beer can cock, uncircumcised. He was hiding quite a treasure as he watched me assess his mass. My cock is really sensitive because I was circumcised, but an infection created a buildup of scar tissue. I can't even wear boxers, too much friction. Are you Canadian? Yes, I believed that I could write the Cox Guide to Circumcision Practices of the Globe. I glibly call myself an authority on international renown on all medical genital topics. I take his thickness in hand, squeezing to watch his face turn to terror. I saw he had a broad back, and I got the heavy flogger. I sensed his meaty body would like that thuddy sensation. The lashing brought groans to his lips, yet were weighted in deep massage and muscle release, and interrupted by sharp crescendos of pain. I built him up with canes to a staccato of sensation with the soundtrack of Fight Club in the background. The loud chaos mirrored what was in his sphere, growling, hissing pain. He grew tight from his troubled foreskin, and I saw a clear bubble of precum on the slit. The circumcision-scarred tissue tightly held things askew. I bent at the knees to be at eye level, bowing to the delicate, viscous molecules held within the tension. I saw his cock bubbled as his cum dripped to one side indolently. I took the thinner cane off the red walls and let him size up his fortitude. I'm going to build you back together, feeling his gearshift scar with my hand, his light gray short buzz cut giving me nothing to hold on to his direct attention, to focus completely on my face. He was body in his body. The slow building endorphins I felt as he off-gassed his chemicals of masochism and remuneration. I saw the relief of the real physical pain giving him the focus of sanguine grief of the car accident 7 years ago. I gave voice to his mind about that pain, taking his thick cock in my hand and making him come with my tight, whole hand squeezes. The room silent as the disc clicked back to the beginning of the soundtrack, the prelude sounding like another ending, his voice becoming ragged breaths of constricted airway. He was foggy with eyes glazed, his broad body spent cleaning his mask delicately with the cheap, rough paper towels. I never really followed the house rules about what sexual contact was, as I know legally it's all a slippery slope, ending in paperwork or jail, both frightening to an off-the-books business. And I was never reckless, just realistic, as there would be no arrest near the Jack in the Box, just off 101 on Tuesday at 9 p.m. for a white cis worker. He was a businessman, and I felt that night was some formula that he enacted in the cities that he visited, always taking with him that ghost wife in every session, as she was entrenched within his grief cycle, expressed episodically with pain as his conduit me, just that woman that he hired in San Francisco house in the Bayshore that evening. I gave gravity and attention to his trauma, followed by emotional and sexual respite, and finished with gentle coddling. I know that grieving pain at 41 after my wife died of oral cancer. I went back to work a week after she died to be in the seething torrent of emotions and endorphins that imbibed at my workplace. I grieved hard with some clients, giving them explosive dominance far past any of our comfort levels, because grief never gives consent. I professionally subbed to tears, crying as I submitted to canings that brought my client to a safe word that scene to ask if I was okay, my grief smogging the room. I was alive that night long ago at that Bayshore to poke at that place, that scar, to make sure it was still hurt to be alive, as alive was being in hurled pain. Da-dum, these crimes. The next paid hour was on. My next client hour would start in 15 minutes at the little dungeon that could not on the Bayshore, as it closed a year later. He settled and put himself together again. He did not tip. He enacted his ritual and was unremarkable in how he left. I cleaned the cooling room, wondering who would hear his story next. I broke his scar tissue and riddled myself into his story as he riddled himself into mine, as scarves web and break with human force and fury, and we become smashed into who we are. Thank you.
Zoe Cat. I'm feeling like I really, really, really hope that the New York Times review of books can fucking get you when you get there. I feel like we've all learned a lot so far, haven't we?
Yeah.
Because that's one of my fetishes.